Welcome back to EPSS. This is where we break down academic writing into clear, engaging, and practical insights. The goal of this video today is to keep your literature review engaging, structured, and focused, so the reader is eager to move on to the next section. How can you make your literature review an academic storytelling? That's exactly what we're exploring today. By the end of this video, you'll understand how to craft a literature review that flows logically, maintains academic rigor, and keeps your examiner glued to your work. Don't forget to subscribe for easy-to-follow breakdowns, expert advice, and engaging discussions on academic success. So let's get started. A literature review is more than just a collection of references or a summary of previous studies. It is the storytelling of your research in an academic arena. Through this process, you weave a coherent and logical narrative that connects various studies, findings, theories, and arguments, shaping them into an integrated discussion that supports your research. The literature review serves as the foundation of your study, providing the necessary context to justify the importance of your work and demonstrating your comprehension of existing knowledge. The literature review is where you craft the main storyline of your research, presenting and analyzing existing knowledge while highlighting who said what and how it fits into the context of your study. This storytelling process is not a form of casual narration or simple conversation with no intention, where unrelated pieces of information are shared arbitrarily without a logical sequence. Instead, it requires a deliberate and strategic organization of ideas to ensure clarity, coherence, and academic rigor. Imagine researchers engaging in random conversations. One person shares a piece of information and another responds with, "Why are you telling me this?" The reply might be, "So that you know," but the uninterested listener could retort, "I don't want to know because it does not relate to me." A literature review should never resemble such a disjointed conversation. Instead, every source and argument must have a clear purpose and a direct connection to the broader research discussion, ensuring the narrative is meaningful, relevant, and logically structured. By carefully selecting and organizing your sources, you create a cohesive storyline that not only informs but also engages the reader, setting the stage for your research and demonstrating its significance within the academic conversation. Next is crafting a compelling literature review. To create a strong literature review, begin by exploring the historical background and foundational studies that have shaped your field. This provides context for how ideas have evolved over time and helps establish the groundwork for your research. Next, focus on key debates and controversies within the field. Identify current trends, highlight recent studies, and emphasize emerging themes. Intellectual tension keeps academic storytelling engaging, so showcase competing perspectives, such as, while some scholars argue that X is the primary driver of Y, others contend that Z plays a more significant role. Frame these debates as opportunities for further exploration, naturally guiding readers toward your research question. Presenting contrasting viewpoints creates a dynamic and engaging discussion of the field. Examine the theoretical frameworks and methodologies used in previous studies. This helps readers understand how your work fits within or challenges existing paradigms. Turning your literature review into an academic storytelling exercise involves weaving together the existing research into a coherent, engaging narrative that not only summarizes the field but also highlights the evolution of ideas, identifies gaps, and sets the stage for your own research. A compelling literature review follows a clear and structured storyline that keeps examiners and other readers engaged, making them eager to explore the next subtopic. The following is a typical storyline that can achieve this. Establish a clear narrative arc. Establishing a clear narrative arc in your literature review begins with setting the scene and introducing the broader context of your research topic. Start by painting a vivid picture of the field, highlighting its significance and why it matters in the larger academic, social, or practical landscape. For example, if your research focuses on climate change adaptation, you might begin with a compelling statement like, As global temperatures continue to rise, the need for effective climate change adaptation strategies has become one of the most pressing challenges of our time, impacting ecosystems, economies, and communities worldwide. This introduction should spark curiosity and draw readers in by emphasizing the urgency or relevance of the topic. Next, provide a brief overview of how the field has evolved, touching on key milestones or turning points in the research. For instance, early studies focused primarily on technological solutions, but recent work has shifted toward understanding the social and cultural dimensions of adaptation. By framing your review in this way, you not only establish the why behind your research, but also create a sense of anticipation, guiding readers through the narrative and preparing them for the deeper exploration of themes, debates, and gaps that follow. See this example of an introduction. The study of high school learners' adaptation to the university environment has evolved significantly over the past 2 decades. Early research primarily focused on psychological solutions, such as academic support programs, to mitigate the challenges of transitioning to higher education. However, as the social dimensions of this transition became increasingly apparent, scholars began to explore the role of peer support networks, mentorship programs, and institutional policies in fostering successful adaptation and resilience. This approach ensures your literature review is not just a summary of existing work, but a compelling story that underscores the importance of your research. The body of your literature review must indicate the rising action. What do we mean by this? Trace the development of ideas in your field of study to build a compelling narrative. Highlight key studies, theories, and debates that have shaped the current understanding of the topic, creating a sense of progression and intellectual momentum. See an example that illustrates a rising action. Smith 2010 was among the first to argue that adaptation strategies for university transition must account for students' diverse backgrounds and prior educational experiences. This perspective was further developed by Jones et al. 2015, who introduced the concept of participatory adaptation, emphasizing the importance of involving students, especially those from underrepresented groups, in the development of support programs. However, these approaches were not without criticism. Brown 2018 contended that participatory methods often failed to address underlying institutional barriers, leading to inequitable outcomes in student support initiatives. This rising action ensures your literature review is more than a static summary. It becomes a story of intellectual evolution, setting the stage for your contribution to the ongoing academic conversation. Let us talk about the reaching the climax in your literature review. By weaving these elements together, you create a dynamic and engaging narrative that not only summarizes the state of the field, but also builds anticipation for the climax, which is the identification of a gap or unresolved issue that your research will address. The climax of your literature review is where all discussions lead to a central realization, which is the gap your study will address. This is the moment where you emphasize the need for your research, answering what's missing, what still needs to be explored. This turning point is where you justify the necessity for your study, showing how it fills a critical void or advances the conversation. For example, although several studies have examined X, little attention has been paid to Y, making it essential to explore. Or, while previous research has provided valuable insights, it has overlooked Z, which this study seeks to address. Then you need to create a sense of anticipation for the reader. Conclude with a statement that positions your study as the next step. Use ending statements like, "This study builds on previous research by examining X in a new context, offering fresh insights into Y," or "By addressing this gap, this research will contribute to a deeper understanding of Z and its implications." By crafting your literature review with a clear climax, you ensure that your study feels like an essential continuation of the academic conversation, one that adds good value to the field. And now let us move on to discuss organizing and synthesizing information in your literature review and how it can be done. Organizing and synthesizing information in your literature review transforms it from a mere summary of existing studies into a cohesive and compelling academic narrative. A literature review is more than just a summary of existing studies. It tells a cohesive story by organizing and synthesizing research to build a unified narrative. This requires careful structuring, so that each section flows logically into the next. Organize your literature review thematically and not chronologically based on when studies were published. Instead of listing studies in the order they were published, group them by themes, concepts, or methodologies. This helps you build a narrative around ideas rather than dates. For example, you might organize your review around theoretical frameworks, empirical findings, or methodological approaches. It is critical to ensure that your research highlights connections and evolutions. Show how studies are interconnected. For instance, explain how one study built on or challenged another, creating a sense of progression in the field. Use phrases like, building on this work, you can say X argued that you say what it is built on. In contrast to Y's findings, mention that Z proposed X and Z. This idea was further developed by A, B, C, and Z. This ensures smooth transition into how your study builds upon and addresses these gaps. By this point, readers should feel invested in your research and eager to see how it contributes to the academic conversation. There is also what is called signposting in a literature review. Signposting is a key technique that enhances the clarity and coherence of your literature review. It helps signal transitions between themes, debates, or sections, ensuring a clear and logical flow. It acts as a roadmap, guiding the reader through your discussion and ensuring smooth transitions between themes, debates, and sections. Effective signposting makes your literature review more structured, engaging, and easy to follow. Signposting also helps emphasize the structure of your argument. For example, you can use phrases like, having explored the theoretical foundations of X, we now turn to its practical applications to transition from one theme to another. Similarly, when introducing a contrasting perspective, you might write, while the majority of studies support Y, a growing body of research challenges this view, arguing instead for Z. By using these cues, you not only maintain coherence and flow, but also help the reader anticipate what's coming next, making your literature review more engaging and easier to follow. Effective signposting ensures that your narrative feels intentional and well organized, guiding the reader seamlessly from one idea to the next while reinforcing the logical progression of your argument. Why is signposting important in a literature review? Number 1, it helps the reader follow the structure of your argument. Number 2, it clarifies how different studies and ideas are connected. And lastly, it highlights key shifts in focus, such as moving from theoretical foundations to empirical research. Let us delve into the types of signposting and how to use them. The first one is when introducing a new section or theme, you use it to indicate a shift in focus. For example, having explored the historical foundations of X, we now turn to its practical applications. The second one is used when transitioning between contrasting perspectives and you showcase academic debates with clear transitions. An example will be to say, while the majority of studies suggest X, a growing body of research challenges this view, arguing instead for Y. The third one highlights connections between studies and demonstrates how research builds on or diverges from previous work. You can write it like this: building on Smith's 2010 framework, Jones' 2015 expanded its scope by incorporating Y. Now, the fourth one identifies research gaps and justifying your study by emphasizing what is missing in the literature and leads into your own research. You can say, despite these advancements, little attention has been paid to the role of X in Y. The last one is used for summarizing and looking ahead in order to prepare the reader for the next section. It may read, the following section will discuss the methodological approaches used to examine X. Incorporate critical analysis in your work. A well-structured literature review does more than summarize. It contextualizes and justifies the importance of your research. Don't just summarize studies, evaluate them. Discuss their strengths, limitations, and implications. This critical engagement adds depth to your narrative and demonstrates your understanding of the field. Through this structured approach, the literature review does more than just summarize existing research. It critically evaluates the work of other scholars. By doing so, it highlights major findings, identifies gaps in the research, and assesses the strengths and limitations of previous studies. By identifying gaps in the existing knowledge and pointing out areas that require further exploration, you provide a solid foundation for your study. This analytical approach demonstrates not only your knowledge of the subject, but also your ability to engage critically with the literature. This aspect of the literature review serves as a bridge between past research and your own work, explaining why your study is necessary and how it contributes to the field. For example, consider a study discussing the presence of chemicals that have toxins in soil used for farming. Suppose existing research states that certain fertilizers release chemicals with toxins that persist in the soil even after the fertilizer has dissipated. Further studies indicate that these toxins contribute to specific diseases when farm produce is obtained from this type of soil, like cancers. When conducting a literature review on this topic, you would not simply state these facts. Instead, you would weave them into a cohesive argument. You would cite articles that provide evidence for the presence of these toxins, discuss the diseases associated with them, and critically analyze the reliability of different studies. Emphasize the "so what" question. Throughout your literature review, make it clear why the studies you're discussing matter. Connect them to the bigger picture of your research topic. Show how particular studies advanced the field, challenged assumptions, or opened new avenues for inquiry. As you build toward your research question, synthesize existing research to highlight key debates and unresolved issues. Use phrases like, "Despite these advancements, a critical gap remains in understanding how X influences Y. While much has been written about X, little attention has been paid to Y." By the end of your review, readers should see how existing research logically leads to your study. Conclude with a strong statement that positions your work as the next step in the academic conversation, such as, "This study addresses this gap by exploring X through the lens of Y, offering new insights into Z and advancing our understanding of the field." By the end of your review, the reader should clearly see how the existing research logically leads to your research question. This approach not only justifies the need for your research, but also frames it as an essential contribution to the ongoing academic conversation. The important finding and using your voice in a literature review. Now let us discuss what is your voice, how you can use it with examples. Your voice is essential in a literature review because it reflects your ability to critically analyze, synthesize, and present information in a structured way. Your voice does not mean inserting personal opinions, but rather shaping the discussion by selecting relevant sources, interpreting findings, and making connections between studies. It allows you to guide the reader through the literature and demonstrate your unique perspective on the subject matter. Your voice in this case comes from how you organize and evaluate these findings to support your research problem. Types of your voice in a literature review includes the following. Number 1, descriptive voice. It is used when summarizing the key points of existing research without adding an evaluation. For example, Smith in 2020 found that X is a major factor influencing Y. Number 2, analytical voice, which is applied when you compare, contrast, and evaluate different sources. For instance, while Smith in 2020 argues that X is a major factor, Jones in 2021 presents evidence that suggests Y plays a more significant role. Number 3, critical voice, which is used to highlight gaps, limitations, and biases in previous research. For example, although Smith's 2020 study provides valuable insights, Its reliance on a small sample size limits its generalizability. And lastly, number 4, the argumentative voice. This one is used to position your research within the literature and justify your study. For example, given the conflicting evidence on X, further research is necessary to clarify its role, which this study aims to address. Supporting interpretations with evidence derived from peer-reviewed studies is crucial for a literature review. Providing citations of relevant information, statistical data, and summarizing key findings strengthens the reliability of your discussion. To further validate your claims, it is essential to compare different sources, considering their methodologies, results, and conclusions. This comparative approach not only strengthens your argument, but also demonstrates your understanding of the broader scholarly conversation. Remaining objective is another key aspect of an effective literature review. While analyzing the literature, it is important to recognize potential biases in studies and acknowledge the limitations of certain research findings. How to maintaining academic integrity. A literature review should integrate multiple sources within each paragraph rather than focusing on a single citation, as relying on just one source can make it read more like a summary of a single study rather than a critical analysis of the topic. By integrating various perspectives within a single paragraph, you create a richer, more nuanced analysis that highlights patterns, contradictions, and gaps in the literature. For example, instead of Smith 2020 found that X influences Y, a more engaging synthesis would be, while Smith 2020 argues that X influences Y, Jones 2021 presents conflicting evidence suggesting that Z plays a more significant role. Meanwhile, Brown 2022 highlights the interplay between X and Z, indicating a need for further research into their combined effects. This approach strengthens the literature review by demonstrating critical engagement and positioning your research within the broader scholarly discourse. Referencing sources correctly is fundamental to maintaining academic integrity and substantiating claims with credible evidence. I have discussed this in my previous video. In essence, a literature review is the storytelling of your research. It involves organizing a diverse range of scholarly sources into a clear, logical narrative that builds a strong foundation for your study. By weaving together different arguments, theories, and findings, you provide a comprehensive overview of the current state of knowledge in your field. Ultimately, an effective literature review demonstrates not only your understanding of the subject, but also your ability to engage critically with existing scholarship, setting the stage for further inquiry. Let's examine common pitfalls to avoid in order to maintain engaging and precise language in your literature review. Using clear and precise language in your literature review is essential for keeping the reader engaged while ensuring academic rigor. Clear, concise writing enhances readability and prevents confusion, making complex ideas more accessible. By adopting precise and academic language, writing becomes more credible and appropriate for scholarly discussions. To maintain clarity and academic rigor, consider these key points. 1. Avoid unnecessary jargon. Instead, use discipline-specific terms to maintain clarity and simple terms for accessibility to a broader academic audience. For example, unnecessary jargon like this. The implementation of multifaceted strategic frameworks has resulted in the proliferation of innovative approaches in the optimization of operational efficiency. Instead, use clear and precise alternatives, such as using different strategies has led to new ways of improving efficiency. Therefore, to maintain a formal tone in academic writing, it is essential to avoid social media language, which often includes slang, abbreviations, and overly casual expressions. Instead of using phrases like "a lot of research has been done" or "tons of studies show," opt for more precise wording such as "extensive research has been conducted" or "numerous studies indicate." Similarly, replacing informal words like stuff or things with specific terms like concepts, factors, or variables enhances clarity and professionalism. Additionally, avoid contractions such as can't or won't, and use their full forms, cannot or will not, for a more formal tone. This revision simplifies the language, making the message clearer while retaining its original meaning. Use active voice where appropriate. For instance, it has been suggested that ABC are rather opt for Smith 2020 suggested that EFG for a more direct and engaging tone. Vary sentence structure. A mix of short and long sentences improves readability and flow, making your writing more engaging. Be concise and avoid redundancy. Instead of "the study conducted by Smith 2020 examines ABC," simply say "Smith 2020 examines XYZ" to keep your writing precise and efficient. Instead of relying on repetitive or overly technical phrasing, aim for clarity and dynamism in your writing. For example, rather than saying "many studies have shown that X is important," you could write "Recent research by Smith 2020 and Jones et al. Highlights the critical role of X in shaping Y, with compelling evidence suggesting Z." Vary your sentence structure and word choice to avoid monotony. Use phrases like "building on this insight," or "a growing body of evidence suggests," or "contrary to earlier assumptions," or "these will keep the narrative fresh and engaging," and etc. Additionally, be specific about the contributions of each study you discuss. Instead of vague statements like "several researchers have explored X," say, "while Lee 2019 demonstrated the impact of X on Y, Martinez 2021 revealed its unexpected implications for Z." This approach not only makes your writing more compelling, but also demonstrates your deep understanding of the literature. By balancing precision with variety, you can craft a literature review that is both intellectually rigorous and enjoyable to read, ensuring your audience remains captivated while following the progression of ideas. It is very important to conclude your literature review with a purpose. Concluding your literature review with purpose leaves a lasting impression and clearly positioning your research within the broader academic conversation. Begin by summarizing key themes and debates you've explored, synthesizing the main insights and trends in the field. For example, you might write, "This review has highlighted the evolution of X from its early conceptualization as Y to its current understanding as Z, while underscoring ongoing debates about A and B." Next, clearly restate the specific gap, unresolved issue, or limitation in the existing literature that your research aims to address. Use precise language to highlight this gap. For example, "While previous studies have made significant advancements, a crucial gap remains in understanding how X functions within the context of B, especially considering Z." This approach ensures that the necessity of your research is explicitly conveyed, reinforcing its relevance and contribution to the field. Finally, transition smoothly into your research objectives, showing how your work will fill this gap and contribute to the ongoing narrative. For instance, this study seeks to address this gap by investigating X through the lens of B, employing Z methodology to provide new insights into A and advance our understanding of B. By concluding in this way, you not only reinforce the significance of your research, but also create a seamless bridge between the existing literature and your own work, positioning it as the next logical step in the academic conversation. And that concludes our discussion on literature reviews as a form of storytelling. By synthesizing multiple sources, maintaining a formal academic tone, and clearly identifying research gaps, you can craft a compelling and cohesive review that contributes meaningfully to your field. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit the like button. It really helps us out. Subscribe to IPSS for more academic writing tips and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Have any thoughts or questions? Drop them in the comments below. Let's keep the conversation going. See you in the next video.